Welcome back to another episode of the Pursuit of Progress podcast. Guys, we've got a really exciting episode today for you. It's actually been my co-host and I's first guest interview that we have here on our new podcast. Really excited. We're starting off with a heavy hitter, somebody I've been really looking forward to connecting with and just learning about his story for quite some time. And obviously it's somebody very close to Ben. So Ben, why don't you go ahead and introduce our guest today, who he is and what's so special about him.
Yeah, well, that is so exciting. And that's right. How does that feel? First guest ever in the history of Pursuit of Progress. So it's a really big day here. And the first guest ever, drum roll, is my brother, Jordan Adams. Now, the reason that we asked him to come on is because, not just because he's my brother, who he is, his values, the person that he is, and the person that he's becoming really fits the mold of this podcast, The Pursuit of Progress. When I think of Jordan and his story, there's been so much progress over the past 10 years, from, the boy to the young man to, the person to the leader and the investor that he is. And just to kind of give everyone a background, this is someone who has over 50 monthly revenue streams from different businesses, investment properties. And I don't know what the exact number of rental properties that he owns, but I know it's over 35. And this is someone who is also a multiple business owner. And a lot of this has developed and prospered in the last 10 to 12 years. So, Jordan, thank you for coming on. Very excited to have you.
Absolutely, man. I'm happy to be here. So thank you guys both for thinking of me as your first guest of this new endeavor and a start to an incredible journey moving forward. So I appreciate the opportunity.
And what an intro, man. That is very impressive, Jordan. I'm excited to hear a little bit more about that. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, let's jump right in. Jordan, when I think of you, I just think of all of the different things that you've been able to do with all the businesses that you've owned over the years and currently own, all of the different rental properties. But there's one time in your life, one story that you always kind of go back to, and we were talking about this again, as a matter of fact, just earlier this afternoon, and it was around the birth of your first child, Rockwell. And at the time, and you're welcome to correct me if I'm wrong, but at the time, I believe that you were renting
Yeah.
and you had a little bit of a nest egg built up. And you had a little bit of a dilemma. You were thinking, should I go invest this into some real estate and start my real estate journey? Or should I go buy, the minivan or the new car and use that as a down payment on a minivan, knowing that you had a child coming? So kind of just share why that was so important, what decision you made, and then how that's impacted you the last, 10 years, and what that has done to you, in the present.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, my journey into real estate simply is, when I was younger, I knew that I didn't want to kind of conform and do everything else that everybody was doing. So I started educating myself. That was the only thing I knew how to do. That was the only thing I could get my hands on. That was the only thing I could afford. Someone once told me it doesn't matter where you start as long as you start somewhere. And I just took that advice like, okay, I'm going to just go grab the Rich Dad Poor Dad book. At the time, Barnes and Noble, you could go there and just sit there and read for free. Grab as many of these real estate books that I could, and
Mhm.
even though I didn't have the capital, even though I didn't have everything, I was preparing myself for when I had the capital, when I had those opportunities, I'd be ready to go. And so, Rachel and I, my wife, we got married young, kind of on a whim, and then she moved out here to Tulsa, and all within getting married, starting a new job, and going to college. I was 25, 26 at the time. All of these things happened, and we moved into this new job, which we were the managers of an apartment complex. All of this stuff happened in about a month. And so, you know, when someone tells me that it's not possible to save a down payment when it's not possible to get ahead in your current situation. I know firsthand that it's very possible, and it's just how bad you want to do something and how willing you are to sacrifice. And when you get real like fired up and excited about these things, you start finding ways to bring in additional money. You start finding ways that you never really would have thought about to bring in that extra $300 to save that you can put towards a down payment. And all these little things just start compounding, compounding and compounding. And, as you're reading the books and educating yourself, as you're saving the money for the down payment, as, my realtor, who's still my realtor to this day, looking at houses every day, it's like all of this collective of stuff over a long period of time translates into action, being able to make a decision, a prepared decision.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were able to save a down payment over the course of a year. I think we only made about $3,500 at the time. We lived for free, so I was able to save my paycheck, live off of Rachel's paycheck, and we were able to muster together $25,000 for our first down payment. And like Ben said, we had a kid. We only had an '06 Accord. We had one vehicle between us both, and the car was coming up on 10 years old. And the decision was, do we get a new car to make our lives a little more convenient, a little safer, driving around in that SUV, or do we stay with what we have and buy that first rental property that we had diligently prepared for over the course of a year or two, and take that leap of faith, even though it was gonna when you get rid of that lump sum of money for the first time on an investment, and you have no like safety net, it's a very scary and challenging thing. So just taking that first leap of faith to be able to do that really, really was the first time and the propelling factor of everything that has transpired from that, moving forward over the next 10 to 12 years from that point.
I got a quick clarifying question. So that very first real estate purchase you made, it wasn't for a primary residence. You were still living at the apartment for free. Your very first real estate purchase was actually an investment property.
It was. And again, that was the first purchase we made. That was the first house I ever bought. So to get out of the mindset of like, this is my house and I am entitled to live in the first house I get, I buy, I save, it's my house, I get to move in. That was a very challenging, like emotional process to go through, to know like I have to have someone else live in my house while I'm still renting. But it's that attitude moving forward that has allowed me to like separate, it's if you can't get over that hurdle, it's one of the things why people stop from taking that first step into investing, is because they can't get over the fact that there's a bigger picture. It's not about if it's theirs. It's about making money and building wealth.
Yeah. How is it going to serve you? And in what manner is it serving you?
Right.
And we were talking about this earlier today where, let's say that you did buy the new car and you put a large down payment on a car, and then you finance, maybe you bought a new car for 50 grand, and you put a down payment of 25,000 for a new car, and then you financed 20 to 25,000. Well, you'd be making payments on that. And how much would that car that was new 10 years ago be worth now? Well, probably very little compared to what, how much equity have you gained in that investment property? And do you still own that property today?
Absolutely. So at the time, if I would have bought a vehicle, right, a brand new vehicle, my payment would have been basically the same as what that house payment is. I live in Tulsa, a very affordable market. It was a 4-bedroom, 2-bath. The payment's like $650. My car payment maybe would have been like $450, at the time. But the beautiful thing is I never made the payment, and so I was able to have someone else make that payment for me, cash flow it, and now that property has appreciated 150%. I bought it at 100,000. Now it's worth roughly 250. And the funny thing about this house is I bought it at the foreclosure out of the '08 market. I bought it like 2011 ish. And I haven't, the only thing I did was paint the place to this day. I've never done anything else, and I'm getting top dollar in rents because it's a great area and those rents just appreciate, you know.
Mm.
Don't jinx yourself, Jordan. You're gonna
Hey,
get a call tonight that there's a flood in the house.
oh, I got that call on another property last week, so we've already crossed that bridge.
So on that
Yeah.
first investment, though, you obviously were the property manager. You were doing everything. You didn't have any extra money to be outsourcing any of that. So you're learning firsthand every aspect of being a rental property owner.
Absolutely. And things were a lot different back then. Zillow wasn't as like Zillow now for managing tenants is night and day. Like that, there was no you go on there and find tenants, and Zillow, screens them. It runs the background check and their credit report. Like none of that stuff really existed. So we had to learn firsthand simultaneously while taking over that other job at the apartments where I managed that. That was my first time ever doing any of this stuff. So I was managing a 50 unit complex with no experience and buying a rental property. And so they kind of just worked in tandem, like how I had to go about finding tenants, screening tenants, the whole nine yards. So, it wasn't like I had all this experience, someone was walking me through it, but I had
Yeah.
enough knowledge from reading and educating myself as a directional point to know that, I was hopefully on the right path.
That's such a great point. And the mistake that I see a lot of people make, whether it's buying their first home or starting that business or even starting, social media or YouTube or whatever it is they want to have all of the answers up front. They want to be perfect instead of just getting started. So, I mean, that first investment property 10 or 12 years ago, a really big dot on your timeline, and who knows if what things would look like had you not made that decision.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes in line with my next question for you is in reference to vision. You've mentioned over and over again how important having a very strong vision and self identity for the person, the leader, the man, the investor that you are. Share with us why having a vision, in your opinion, is so important, and what do you see for yourself in the future for Jordan, the man, the investor, the leader, and the father, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the line?
Yeah, I mean, the vision for me, I think a lot of people, when you don't understand money and you don't understand the wealth process, people think it's just about you getting a bunch of money and being the greedy rich guy, and really, it's like it's always been about the freedom of time for me, the freedom of choice, the freedom of options, and with that first investment property that I bought, I actually ended up getting fired from that job that I had. And so they fired me on a whim, so I had to move out because I lived there and worked there, right? And so because I had that rental property, it also became vacant at the same time. So it gave me the option and the freedom to transition to that house temporarily for like 6 months as a transition point. And from there, I realized like just how important it is to stay focused on the vision of freedom of time, and the more freedom of time you want, the more sacrifices you have to make, the more disciplined approaches you have to make, the more things you have to let go of in order to kind of just continue to refine yourself, to be able to refine the vision, to be able to really accomplish your goals, not just get up, go to work, pay your bills, but like really make an impact in people's lives around you.
How long after the first investment, this first property, how long was it after owning it until you realized, hey, this is actually, doable? Did your vision change once, you had your first property or your second property? Did you always have a big, there's like a BHAG, for example, big, hairy, audacious goal. Did you have that from day one of, I want to have an X number amount of rental property portfolio, or did
Yeah.
that kind of consistently change as you continued to kind of go down your path?
I wanted enough passive income to where I could choose to go to a work or not. Like I could choose to go to a fit, like be an employee or not. Like if I didn't want to be in a place where like if I took a 2 week vacation at a normal W-2 job, that I was stressed out the whole entire time, that I have no money when I get back and I just spend it all. I just wanted to get enough income to where I could go and I just always had something coming in. And so, for me, it's like if I could have got to 10 properties, that was kind of like my initial goal, was like 10 properties, and then once you start realizing kind of how it works, and when, the first time I really like saw inflation hit with rents and all these things, when you have a fixed mortgage, on that particular property's fixed mortgage was 650, rents were initially 1,000, then they go to 1,400, and the spread just becomes more like greater and greater. You just get more fired up to like just put all your money into investing, because there's no reason not to do it.
How long did it take you to get to 10?
So originally I kind of took the Dave Ramsey approach, where I bought that first property. I tried to pay it. I almost had it paid off in like 2 years. And then I did a cash out refi and I bought another house, probably like 2 years later, which is my second one. I flipped that, and then I bought a couple more right thereafter. It probably took me to get to 10. It probably took me. It was like slow. There wasn't any purchases for like 2 years, and then it got to 10 after like a year, probably like 5 in like 2 years. Like probably 6 years total.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, once you start realizing and kind of getting comfortable and understanding your markets, then it's easier to get there quicker as you start building capital and knowing what to look for.
Did you also change? Sorry, Ben. Did you also change your strategy going from single family homes to like duplexes, fourplexes? Was that part of that jump to 10 units, or were those all single families?
There was those are mainly single families. The market's just changed so much. Like back when I first started looking, there was a lot more duplexes available, but the price point was higher, so I didn't have the funds to do that. And then now the duplexes are harder to get. So it's like long term, I really want to be in multifamily units. It's just way less hassle because I self manage everything. So it's just way less hassle dealing with the maintenance and all the stuff and running around, and it's a lot less stressful to do it that way.
Yeah, and one thing I was going to ask is, to get to the level you're at, you've had to make a lot of sacrifices, and I think sometimes, with the glorification of social media, everything is always so rosy, where you see these people getting to live the lifestyle they want and invest in real estate, and drive the luxury car. Talk to us about if that's been your experience, and what sacrifices you have made, what sacrifices you're not willing to make, and how that's allowed you to really 10x your growth over the last couple of years.
Yeah. So, I mean, anybody that wants to become wealthy would agree that, like, you want to be wealthy at 30 as opposed to 40, right? Or, 20 as opposed to 60. And so my mindset was like, I want to get to that place as soon as possible. So anything that can hinder me from getting there, any roadblock that I would put in my path unnecessarily, I just wanted to avoid. I wanted to avoid, car payments. I wanted to avoid unnecessary spending, because if the goal is to be financially free and free of your time, there's no point to have all these wants along the way. Because when you get to financial freedom, you can have those things and not have to compromise your time, right? And so it's like most of the jobs that I ever worked as a W-2 employee, I wasn't making 100 plus thousand. I had a side job as a bartender. Like I said, I did the property management, very unglamorous, really paid okay but not great. And I was still able to do it because I didn't have all of the fancy things that most people want as they tried to build wealth. Really expensive vacations, car payments. And I'm not against any of those things, but it's doing things in levels of priorities. You know, if you have priorities to hit, invest, and you're not hitting those, well, then you don't deserve or you haven't earned for yourself the vacation or the
Mhm.
upgrade in car or whatever the case may be. And so I always try to make myself earn those things by doing A, B, C, and D first with investing.
And I'm assuming that your wife from day one has been on the same page with a lot of that. I could see that as being a pretty touchy subject if one person has certain life aspirations, maybe traveling or, certain things that might vary from your goals. Was that ever an issue or you
Oh
guys
yeah,
always
yeah.
on the same page on that?
No, I mean it was an issue, because her coming from a place of not being wealthy, me not coming from or me coming from a place of also not being wealthy. It was a leap of faith for both of us, and I just kept saying like, "Hey, I really believe in the education that I've given myself by reading these books, by doing it this way." And so there was definitely a period of adjustment of like, you know, this is not how you do it. This is not going to work. No one else does this. And so we went through a period of like, and I was at the beginning of our marriage, I was too hardcore, like with the budget, and I should have allowed more freedoms. But for me, that was like the only way to like end the bad habits. Like I just got to get rid of these things, or
Mhm.
or again, they're just going to drag on for 2 or 3 years longer than they should, and then I'm not going to get to the place I want to be as quickly. So that's why I was so, hardcore. But I wouldn't recommend that for anybody in a newly marriage. But yeah, there was definitely that struggle, and the thing is like the more money, if you do it that way, the more wealth you build, the struggle doesn't really change. It's just being able to walk yourself through the process of, is this something I really need? Yes or no. I don't care if
Yeah.
it's $10 or $10 million. As you build wealth, sometimes you can be like, yeah, it doesn't matter because it's a birthday and like I'm here and it's fine. I'm gonna spend the money even though I normally wouldn't. And so it gives you that option, but it's still the same processes that you have to go through mentally in order to keep yourself in a system of accountability to, just to keep yourself in check. So you just don't squander all the stuff. You worked too hard to go blow it.
Yeah.
That must be something in your guys' genes because I know Ben has a very similar outlook on that and very admirable for both of you guys. I think that's something that a lot of people in that phase of growth probably, get bid on. They start to spend a little bit and get, trying to keep up with the Joneses. And it's
Yeah.
a slippery slope, I imagine.
It is because it's just like when does it end? Like, how many
Hmm.
how many new flyers can someone have? How many brand new shirts can they have? And for me, just again, it was just never about that stuff. It was all for me. It was just about if I want to go. Like this last year, I spent a lot of time substituting at my kids' school because I want to go hang out with them and go see them and be involved in their life. That's more important than buying a new car that would in turn have to make me go to a job to make sure I can make those payments. My time flexibility is more important than that. There'll come a day when I can do both and it will be no sweat off the back. But right now it's like it's just not worth that sacrifice to not be able to have that choice.
And you don't have to give us obviously a number that's between you guys, but do you have in your mind with your wife when that day is going to come? Like, is it a dollar amount? Is it a certain number of units? Like, what is the finish line or the goal for that?
And
I mean,
Rachel's turned the volume up right now. She's
oh
like,
yeah.
hmm.
Oh, she had to leave because she didn't want to have to turn the volume up. No, I mean, there. It's just again, it's not about what's the finish line, what's the end result, like when can I go do stuff. It's just like here are the ratios we can operate within for where we're at today. You know, what do we want to do this year with what we currently have, and if what you want to do requires more income without the sacrificing of time, then we have to create ways and processes in order to create that to be able to keep the main goal of freedom of time as the most important thing. So that could be $5,000 a month. It could be $10 million a month. It's just what you want out of it, and that's what I was saying. Like people, like when you start the wealth journey, that's what people don't realize. It doesn't matter how much you actually make and earn. It matters how little time you have to spend earning that, so that you can then spend your time doing the things that you want. And keeping your expenses low enables you to have more flexibility and less constraints.
I can't think of many other ways to do that that are better than owning real estate and having passive income through rental properties.
Yeah.
Pretty hard to find something else that has that same time versus dollar amount,
Right.
ratio.
Right, and it's not you see on the social media, to Ben's point, it's like, oh, people think like you're in real estate, you don't do anything. That could be further from the truth. I mean, there is a lot of time commitment to it. There's ups and there's downs and there's roller coasters, but at the end of the day, it's the reason why real estate is the number one way to get wealthy. It's a proven method. Everybody needs housing, and it unlike any other business, it does the work largely for you in terms of, if you were going to buy a business, you'd have to figure out how to value that business. Where real estate, it's very straightforward of like, this is the value of this piece of real estate based on the comps. You don't have to do like a deep dive analysis to figure out all the assets, the liabilities, the cash flows. It's just very simple. Someone lives there, here's the market rent, here's what you're paying, is that a good return? It's simple. It's not easy, but it's simple.
Along those same lines, from the outside looking in, as your real estate portfolio has increased over the years, as your revenue streams have increased, and as the amount of businesses that you've bought and sold has increased, it seems to me from the outside looking in that there's also a correlation with the person that you've become, the things that you've done to develop yourself. I know one thing that you've said, when you're on your wealth building journey, is that it's never ever been just about the money, and about the actual wealth. What kind of explain and expand on what you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's always just trying to get to the next level of like, I believe everybody has like a vision in their mind, and for me, it's just being the most well-rounded person that I can be.
You're good.
Just being there for my kids. So it's never about, to Adam's question earlier, is like, when is enough enough? It's not about enough. It's just about what are the goals and what are the characteristics that you need in order to pass down for your generations to be able to handle the opportunities that you give them. And that's kind of like where I'm at now, of like, okay, I have a decent amount of wealth. How do I wisely prepare my children for that? And I have to be okay with the fact that if I don't prepare them for it, it's unwise just to give that to them. Even though my emotions would want to do that. It's not there for their to go spend and burn and live off of. It's there to create more opportunities for the future generations.
Love that. Yeah, generational wealth that's awesome. Very admirable.
Yeah. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah.
Bill?
And oh yeah.
Did you hear me?
Go ahead.
I was just saying that. Does that kind of answer your question there?
Oh, yes, yeah. I think that's and yeah. I mean, just I have seen you from the outside looking in, really work on yourself a lot and self develop. You've referenced a lot of the self education, the self help books you've read, and I always kind of look at your circumstance as someone who, and I feel this way about growth and wealth, regardless of who you are. But I've seen this firsthand with you, where it's like you have to become the person that is going to be able to attract these things into your life. And you do that through commitment, through sacrifice, through discipline, and through growing yourself. And you're someone that I've gotten an opportunity to, see that firsthand. And I just wish that we lived in the same city because we don't get to see each other that often. But
Yeah.
I know that we get to catch up on the phone quite a bit. But yeah, I just wanted to compliment you on, your self growth and the person that you've become.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
And to kind of piggyback off that, Jordan, it sounds like at some point you grew from an investment standpoint where you started expanding outside of just single family. Ben mentioned that you own a mobile home park, for example.
Hmm.
And you also have some businesses on top of the just, rental portfolio. Maybe elaborate a little bit on that, and like when in that process over the last 10, 15 years, did that
Yeah.
happen where you felt confident enough to kind of step outside what was your comfort zone and, try some new things?
Yeah, absolutely. So in, the year of COVID 2020, that was kind of the year that I took the next leap of faith, the next kind of transition into things. And at the time, I had a job. I was an Airbnb. I had like 4 Airbnbs, and I had just finished. Like me and my wife, we had been doing them for a couple of years, kind of before everybody else was doing them. And I've always been a person that's kind of like doing things before. My downfall is sometimes I don't follow through long enough to fruition. But COVID was the thing that ended the Airbnb. So we just had all these houses furnished. We made the decision to sell everything because we didn't know how the market was going to go. I got laid off at that part-time job that I had as a bartender, and then from there it was kind of just like, well, what do I do? Like I don't have an income other than my rental properties. It was the first time where it was like, you know, I gotta. It was so uncertain. And so at the time, I had kind of like a little side job that I had been doing, like assembling things. It's called We Assemble Everything. So we'd put together swing sets, and it came out of putting all these Airbnb things together. I'm like, no one wants to do this stuff. This is horrible. You got to sit here for hours putting this stuff together. Someone's going to pay me to do this. And so like I was like, okay, well I'm just like I have nothing else to do. Hopefully the world doesn't fall off a cliff. And so I just started putting ads out, started doing swing sets, and then everybody was locked, on the lockdown, and then everybody wanted an above ground pool put up because we assemble everything. So it just led to putting these Walmart pools up, which led to like, okay, it first it was just like, let's put these pools up and then we'll just fill them with water. Very simple. Then it was like people wanted their ground leveled. People wanted like a full legitimate install. So I was like, okay. Then I partnered with my brother-in-law who is more like heavy equipment, construction, outdoor construction based. So we kind of formed this pool company on a whim, right? And so then we started realizing like that first year, like we did quite a bit of business. Going into the second year, we needed some equipment. So we ended up buying a dump trailer. At the time they were like $10,000. And that was a lot of money. Still is a lot of money. But I was like, oh man, I don't like, oh, that's a lot of money. And so I was like, I just had this thought of like, okay, if I have this dump trailer and I need it as much as I do, most people aren't going to want to spend 10 grand on a dump trailer for how convenient they are. They're hard. You got to have a spot to put them, to park them. You got to have all these kind of things that you need to have one, and they're expensive, but when you have them, they're like the most convenient things in the world. So I was like, well, why don't I just try to rent this thing out while I'm not using it? And so all of a sudden, it was like, because I really believe in this idea from Airbnb is like of the shared economy. I really
Hmm.
believe in this idea since like 2015, like the shared economy is the economy of the future. And so I just took that idea with the trailers and said, okay, if I need it, I'm going to share it and rent it to somebody else. And then people started renting that trailer so much so that I didn't have a trailer. I had to go rent a trailer because my trailer was rented all the time, and I don't want to lose my customer. And so then I got a second trailer, and then it kind of just turned into this thing where I realized there was this little market for trailers and trailer rentals. And then, I've been doing that ever since, where I've just really just every year just try to continue to grow it and grow it and grow it and grow it. And so, my point is like sometimes you don't know how things are going to evolve or how you're going to make money. Putting swing sets together would turn into, a legitimate equipment rental business. But it's just staying open to those opportunities and kind of, when I was younger, I tried to like tell the customer, like, this is what you want to buy. And then I started learning like the customers will tell you what they want. Like just give them what they want. They want to rent dump trailers. Okay. Why force anything else upon them? And so just kind of taking that approach and just allowing it to organically kind of develop into, what it is today. Um, you know,
That's
just allowing it to grow.
Mm.
And then talk a little bit about the mobile home park stuff too.
Yeah, so the mobile home park was just kind of in the real estate realm, different asset class inside real estate. Obviously, it's been more. I believe that they're a great opportunity. This one, it's about an hour away from me, which is presenting some challenges in a smaller town. But we've had it
Mhm.
coming up on 3 years now, and there's 11 units. There's 11 lots that have 11 homes on them. When we first bought it, there was four that just rented the lot and they had their own home, and then there was six that we rented the home to them and also the lot. And since then, we've just transitioned to like rent to own. Like you rent to own the mobile homes. That way, like you don't have any maintenance. It was just too much going out there trying to fix things. So now it's just rent to own. They're responsible for the maintenance and all the stuff. So it's been a lot more profitable. And again, it's just bringing in all that cash that can help uh, cover expenses, on the single family. And just as that snowball of cash flow gets bigger, you just have so many more options to be able to
Yeah.
do with things, where now I have an extra $5,000 this month. I can go buy another trailer that will increase revenue that I can use on my own personal properties anyway for dumpster cleanouts, whatever. And so I just try to do things that like I'm already doing that help make the wheel go round. And if you can make your competitor like your biggest customer as well, that's where you're really going to start making money. People are already renting dumpsters. So if I have the trailers for rent and I'm using them, then it's just a win-win-win for me.
Mhm.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, that's great, and thank you for sharing that. And I know there's other businesses and other things that you've done, but we're also getting a little bit short on time here. So, kind of, I think last question on my
well,
end is, I just wanted to.
let me say, not to cut you off, let me say one last thing. What I like when it comes to making money, it's not about where you make the money. It's not
Mhm.
about how much you make. It's about what you do with the money. People get so caught up in like, I have to have the
Yeah.
perfect job to make the money. My whole goal has always been is like, let me just bring money in and take every dime and put it in real estate. Bring money in, put it all in real estate. Real estate will pay me. I'll go set up, mouse traps to bring more money in and then just put it in real estate. And I really think if you just follow that model, like it's really difficult to go wrong.
And
Mhm.
that goes back in line with your vision. You have a vision, you have a plan. So when that money comes in, well, you have a purpose. That's there's a plan for that. You're living intentionally. You have a purpose for those dollars, so they can then go feed into something else. And that's also a mistake that I see a lot of people make, where they don't have a plan, and because they don't have a plan, it doesn't give them the ability to have a purpose. It's like, well, I just got this
Yeah,
bonus, or I just had this commission check come in. Like, well, what now? Like, what do I go do? Well, if you have a purpose and a plan and a vision, you already know what to do with it.
exactly.
What I was going to ask you on is, you're someone that has faced a lot of adversity, on a personal level, just being your brother. I know some of the things that you've gone through, that we've both gone through. but also, doing all of the different things that you're doing. You just hinted at the mobile home park and some of the challenges that have been there. Being a business owner, I know there's challenges with that. Tell us how adversity has shaped you and how you look at adversity or problems, or when things that are, challenges that come into your life. What is your perspective? How do you look at those, and how do you overcome those? And what advice would you have?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I was first starting out, it's you're so afraid that something's going to go wrong, and it always does. That you either there's people that just fold, and I see it all the time. Like, I just can't handle the rental business. I'm just so tired of people, doing this to my stuff. I just can't handle. They can't handle the stress. And if when the adversity comes, there's just again, like, as you build wealth, and your time is the most important. There's just no reason to stress out over things that are out of your control unnecessarily. Problems happen. Units flood. Like I said, that unit flood last week. When I first started out, I would have freaking collapsed on the spot. I wouldn't have been able to do anything the rest of the day. But now I know how to handle those problems, and it's often not as bad as you think in your mind that it is. And
Mhm.
if you just plan and prepare, and having faith in God, and with personal issues and stuff like that come around, it's just part of the process. It's knowing how to deal with things that much better and more efficiently. And at the end of the day, it's learning how to prepare more. It's learning how to prepare more so that when those things
Mhm.
come, it's not even a thought. You've already prepared for it. You can just move on. It doesn't consume your mental health, your time. You already know what's happening, and that's really the difference now. Is like I try to prepare for those things instead of waiting for them to come.
And wouldn't you also say that it gets your skin so much thicker to where, like, how to react, how to problem solve now, and it also has allowed you to move forward, would you say, as an
Oh,
entrepreneur
absolutely.
and take additional risk?
Absolutely. Like when I had that first job at that property management, that those apartment complexes. I mean, it was a horrible job. I got paid next to nothing. I did everything. I did it all. Maintenance, everything. And if that gave me the thick skin to be able to manage my own units really, I wouldn't say stress free, but a lot less. I without that job, I wouldn't have been able to get where I'm at today. And it gives you this ability to a thick skin, how to handle situations, how to talk to people, knowing, like, you get a sense for tenants, like what you can allow, what you can't allow in terms of like people being late for rents, and et cetera, et cetera. And you just learn that there's more important things to focus on, and you just got to solve the problem as quickly as possible. And if you're doing things, like I said, like creatively, where you leave options open, you'll come to creative solutions to where, like, when you move forward, it doesn't just
Mhm.
have to be black and white. Oh, the tenant didn't pay their rent, I'm evicting them tomorrow. I see so many people do that. I'm like, why? They've been paying you
Yeah.
faithfully for like a year, and the first time they miss, you just want to evict them because you didn't get your money. It's like, I've had tenants. It's like, that's cool. Just pay me a late fee. If I know you're consistently late, pay me my extra $80, and I'll work with you. And so things like that used to stress me out all the time, but now I try to find solutions for things of how we can
Mhm.
both win.
Yeah.
So I've got a question that just kind of goes back to, just seems like from an outsider's perspective, like myself, you have a lot of balls up in the air. You're juggling a lot of different things at
Mm-hmm.
any given day. How do you keep yourself kind of focused on what's going to move the needle forward and not just getting so caught up in the minutia of tasks that aren't really necessarily, moving the needle, whether it be, delegating some of those things to other people, or are you really a firm believer of, for example, like using a Google Calendar or some way to kind of, separate out your day with, when you're, handling certain businesses or certain parts of your personal and professional life?
Yeah.
Do you have some sort of structure or just maybe a couple tips on how you're able to handle
Yeah.
so
So, yeah. So with the rental properties, we reached a point where like one day I woke up and I was like, oh crap, like I have like 30 units now. I can't just be doing the Excel spreadsheet anymore. Like this is crazy. And so,
Mhm.
at the time, this is probably like 3 or 4 years ago, there wasn't really a lot like other like QuickBooks was like an okay way to manage and track your income and expenses and stuff, but there really wasn't a great like user friendly outside of real expensive software for property management. And so we finally found a property management software that we've been using. It's called DoorLoop. Like since then we've been able to scale it. It's based, the price is based on how many units you have. And so I think we pay for the 50-ish units that we have. It's only like $150 a month. But tenants have their own portals. They can make payments online. They can do all their maintenance requests online. You can send out mass text messages, like if it gets cold and their pipes might burst to drip faucets. I was doing all that stuff by texting manually. People sending me freaking Cash App, Venmo, Zelle Pay, taking payments 800 ways. It was crazy. And so that, like, just getting the systems in place, like, have allowed me to really scale. And then, you get to a point where it's like, okay, I can afford an assistant now. Like, I don't need to be answering the emails or calling the electric company to have the utilities turned on when a property goes vacant. Being understanding that if you're doing those things, you're wasting your time. Um, and then like
Mhm.
just like the maintenance stuff, like I'm pretty versed in like all of the construction stuff. And at the beginning, you got to pitch every damn penny, and so it was a lot of times it was me. Now it's like, you know what? I don't need to do all that stuff. And the transition is hard because you mentally have to go to a different gear where you don't feel unproductive by not doing what you used to do,
Yeah.
and finding a new purpose of how you can continue to be productive without being lazy or feeling lazy or like feeling unproductive. And it's,
Yeah.
finding those systems that can keep you moving forward and really just replacing yourself so that you can look back and go, no, like things are still getting done, even though I'm not the one doing them.
Hmm.
Because if you like what I found, like, is if you hire someone to do something and then you try to go do it yourself, they just stand there and watch you. And now you're paying a guy to watch you do the work. I mean,
Mhm.
stupid, but that's part of the challenges of growing as a person.
Yeah.
So if that answers your questions, with the assistant, she does a lot of the Google calendars for me. The trailers are pretty flexible where I just schedule my appointments like first thing in the morning. So there's not a lot of, is why I like the rental business. There's not a lot of moving parts. And I've just tried to move into things where there's just not a lot of moving parts. Someone wants a trailer, they call, I put on the schedule, I have someone meet them, they rent it out, and then every day that they keep it, they just get charged on autopay.
I think my favorite aspect of multifamily and just kind of what you're talking on this point is just how there aren't any other businesses out there that are so easy to scale. It's just such a scalable business where you get this foundation established and then just to scale from 5 to 10 to 50 to 100 for you now to go from 50 units to 250 units. You have such a good understanding of the foundational aspects of the business that it really isn't that much more difficult. You have just such a good understanding of it at this point.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and again, if you constantly don't live off the cash flows, and if like
Yeah.
and your rents increase and your payment started out at $600, well now, I mean, I've got properties where my payment's like $1,000, and now my rents are bringing in almost 3,000. Right? So I'm
Hmm.
making 2 grand. And if you don't use that money to fuel your lifestyle, well, now that one house can go back up. I can go buy 2 more houses, and that one house's rents can cover those payments in the event of a vacancy or in the event something goes south. Like, and so it's just having one house cash flow back up the other house. And if everything's just backing each other up, then you
Hmm.
get to a place where you're bringing in 100 G's a month. And for you to take a small 5-10% off of that for yourself doesn't affect the process because everything's being paid for and backed up by the assets and the cash flow.
That's
So,
exactly right, and that's why that discipline that we talked about is so important. Having that vision, knowing where the money is going to go, using your resources in a way that they're covering each other, and it's and we kind of touched on this earlier today too. But it's like once you get to that like 10-year mark, now your properties all have equity and a substantial amount of equity. They're all cash flowing really really well. Whereas
mhm,
that's not always the case, in year one. But once you get to year 10, it's like you got momentum on your side now.
absolutely. You got momentum on your side, and you got equity. So if you get into a real pinch and you had to sell something, even if you had to sell it at a steep discount, it's like I could sell some of my houses for 50% of the value and still make a lot of money. If you got into a real tight situation, it's and so you just have that reassurance of like, I because of that I can continue to build because you have that base layer built out. But getting there is a challenge. But if anybody that's listening, if you want to do it, I don't care what market you're in, and if it's an unaffordable market, you may have to move. You may have to be willing to move out of that market, or at least invest out of that market to be able to get
Exactly.
started. If
And I see that all the time. And, people say, well, I can't afford to like purchase here or invest here. And I always say the same thing. Like you can invest in outside markets. And
yeah,
there are deals out there. There are markets like Tulsa and other markets across the US where, you know, it costs a lot less to own a home than it does to rent a home. And that's not
absolutely.
the case for the market that I'm in Denver. It's just expensive regardless. But there are markets like you're saying that make sense. But I think it's not putting labels on yourself. And I see a lot of younger folks and just people in general. They label themselves and say I can't do this, or I don't want to do this, or I'm not willing to give this up. And learning to remove those labels and what type of sacrifice are you willing to make?
And it's also, people mistake price paid versus value. If I were to tell you, Adam, I know you're not as familiar with Tulsa as Ben is because as I've gotten to introduce him out here. But if you were to tell somebody, hey man, you can get a house out here for $60,000, and with maybe 10 or 15 grand, 20, you know, you're going to be this is not a shanty. This is a livable home. This is a livable home. And people go, well, I'm too good for that. I need the that's not a 500,000. What am I going to do with a $60,000 home? Well, what you're going to do is your payments can be $500 a month. You're going to put on Section 8, where you get the government paycheck guaranteed for $1,300 a month, $1,295, and you're going to build equity. And again, even if it's a home that isn't the best rental in the best areas, it builds equity so you can sell it and upgrade at a later date if you choose to do that. You know, but these are, I mean, it's just crazy what these house the risk of buying a house for 60, 70, 80 grand and the market going south and you not being able to recover your principal is just very unlikely. It costs more. It costs more to build the house. The lots,
Yeah.
these lots are 20 grand. And so it's just understanding the risk of like what can actually go wrong, and if it goes wrong, it's not like if something it's not like this one guy I met, he has like thousands of storage units. Adam was crazy. This guy's and he bought a lot of his stuff out of the '08 crash where on one of his storage units he's making like 75,000 a month. It's hundreds of units, and he just said like he only ever had one deal that he didn't make money on in real estate, and it was because he panicked because he didn't think he'd make any money and lose all his money, and he said like he only lost like 5 grand, and that's when the light bulb went off of like, even if the deal isn't the best deal, I still get a lot of my money back. You don't just lose everything. You
Hmm.
know, people think,
Yeah.
oh, I'm just gonna lose everything. It's like, no, you're if you're wise, you can recoup most of that money over a period of time.
Hmm.
Hmm.
You know, it's very unlikely you're going to lose everything unless you just quit and give up and let it go to foreclosure and don't try to get anything back. I mean,
As we wrap up here, what advice would you, or what are some either lessons or advice uh, that you have learned over your career that you'd like to share with the audience? It could be personal finance principles, professional investing related. But what are two or three things that you can share that you think will have an impact?
yeah, and I'll just stick it to real estate. And these are the three things I tell people if they're serious about getting into real estate. I went up and I bought a trailer the other day from probably like 2 months ago now from the place I buy them from, and I got talking with the salesman. And I started. He's like, "Oh, like how do you buy all these trailers?" I was like, "Well, I'm in real estate, and again, because I don't drive brand new cars, like people think I'm making this stuff up, that I'm just like some crackhead, like, oh, this guy, oh yeah, he's got a bunch of properties." And as I got to know this guy, he's like, oh, this guy like knows what he's talking about. And I said, Paul, if you're serious about getting in real estate, here's the three things you need to do: educate yourself. You need to read A, B, C, D, and E books. So you build a confidence, you build an understanding. As you're doing those things, you get with your realtor, you find a realtor that is willing to show you properties based off the knowledge you're getting from these books to tell you how to identify a deal. Go look at houses every single day. And that's what I did with my realtor. I looked at houses every single day, most days for like a year. Every single weekend we'd go out and look like 15 houses. I learned how to identify what an HVAC system was, if it was good, how to look at the electrical system, how to look at the roof, how to identify, even though two houses that were very similar selling for the exact same price, why one was a better value than the other one, right?
Hmm.
Educating yourself, looking at properties, and then saving that down payment that you need to buy that first property. So in a year, you have the education, you know how to identify a good deal, and now you have the capital to go put down on what you just spent a year of your life working towards, and obviously working with a lender and having your financing locked in and ready to go. So you're prepared. So when you go buy that first house, you're not just like, oh my gosh, I hope this thing works out. But you know it's going to work out, and if there's problems, you now know how to address them.
Well said. I like that. So one last question on my end. When it comes to people that are total newbies, had never owned a home before, interested in getting involved in, real estate investing outside of, for example, you mentioned Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad. What would be another entry level book for, people to just kind of get, dip their toe in, just people that are not, well versed on some of the terminology, just a basic book that you feel like provides a ton of value?
Yeah, the Gary Keller book, The Millionaire Real Estate Investor. That's one of my go-to books to recommend to people. Very simple, very just like, wow, I don't know why I'm not doing this. Like this is like very simple. Um, The Richest Man in Babylon is a good, it's a good mindset book. The Millionaire Next Door, where the guy interviews like 1,000 millionaires and like starts and realizes they don't all have Ferraris, but they're just like a regular guy doing regular things. But they're millionaires because they've been diligent. Just a mindset book of like I don't have to do it that way, and I can still be successful. Um, yeah, those are my top books for recommendation off the top of my head. But
Okay.
that Gary, anything by Gary Keller with Keller Williams. I mean, he's just got the Millionaire Real Estate Agent's a great book. Just really breaks it down for the simple person to understand why real estate is such a great building wealth tool over time.
Mhm. Well, I appreciate having you on today, and thank you so much for giving us your time. And yeah, just I know that I learned a lot you're very articulate in your responses, and just your experience and your wisdom is really coming through. So thank you for taking an hour out of your day and spending that with us as our first guests on the Pursuit of Progress.
And I just wanted to throw one last thing in there too, Jordan. I think my biggest takeaway is just your point earlier about just taking action. You don't have to have everything figured out today. Just take action, just move forward. I think you're such a good testament of that, and what in just a short, whatever it is, 12, 13 years, just the night and day difference from where you were to where you are today. That's super inspiring. And I'm sure a lot of our audience is going to feel the same way. So thanks for being really just authentic and vulnerable and sharing all that with us. It's awesome.
Absolutely. Taking action so you have the opportunity to figure it out. If you don't take action, you'll never have that opportunity to figure out how to solve that problem. But yeah, I appreciate you guys. Good luck on the rest of the season with the new endeavor, and I think it's going to go well. So if you ever need me again, let me know. Happy to be a part of it, and hopefully my kids can come on at some point and share their testimonies of how they're battling through adversity and overcoming obstacles as well. So
you'll definitely be back on. I'm excited. That's awesome.
All right,
man.
All right, guys. We'll catch you on the next episode. Pursuit of Progress.
The Pursuit